Welcome to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie.
It is time to change your thinking about infant and toddler classrooms. And Carrie and I are going to talk about the money about your infant and toddler classrooms. Carrie, why are we talking about this? Who decided this needed to be a topic?
Well, I don't remember her name. You didn't tell me you were gonna ask me that question.
Well, we don't know her name.
So,
it was just a fan mail.
so we have something called fan mail. So in most podcast players that you have, you'll be able to see a button that says send fan mail. So you can send an email straight to us and then we can hear from you and respond back. So we had somebody going, okay, public pre-K is being more of a thing. How should I handle that financially? Sort of. Is that a good summary of what she said? I should have pulled this up. I'm a bad person.
I think that's a pretty good way to sum it up. She happened to be a Montessori program, and she is from a West Coast state, and they didn't traditionally have an infant and toddler program. They were just a 3-year-old to 6-year-old program, and with universal pre-K in their state, they're losing a lot of students. So I want to start with one of the basic things, which is make sure that you really understand your educational philosophy and how that's different than what the universal pre-K is offering in your community, and make sure that you can talk to the parents about the advantages of yours. Not so much the disadvantages of theirs, but why yours is a better long-term fit for their kid. Okay.
Yeah. And again, you can say things like, we offer year-round care and education. So you're highlighting the fact that they're going to be closed for spring break and for all of summer and for Christmas break and winter break and fall break and whatever other break because it's a Tuesday, without saying we don't break because it's Tuesday. You're instead saying we offer year-round care. So since this was a Montessori specific program, talking about the fact that the Montessori program envisions a 3-year cycle for the primary classroom, the 3 to 6-year-old classroom is a 3-year cycle, and that people will go through different levels of learning skills and knowledge over that 3-year cycle. They'll get a base knowledge the first time they go through it. They'll get a little deeper the second year and even deeper the third year. So again, knowing that educational philosophy, talking about the 3-year cycle of a Montessori primary classroom. But that wasn't necessarily what she was asking. She was asking, should we have younger kids or older kids? Both of those are possibilities and fit within the Montessori parameter, right? So they have what's called the pre-primary classroom, which is from 18 months to 3 years. And then they have the infants classroom, which is infants through 18 months, right? So you could have a pre-primary classroom and you could have an infants classroom. But a lot of Montessori programs are like, no, I'm a Montessori school. I am not a daycare. I am not a childcare. I don't take care of those children who need diapers. What might be a reason that they might want to reconsider this position that they don't handle people who wear diapers? What are some reasons you might want to do that, Kate?
Well, I don't know. Part of the reason we decided to talk about this today. Universal pre-K and just general competition. So if you are a smaller Montessori program or just a smaller program who works in early learning, chances are you've noticed larger programs, franchises, other people who are now your competition in your community. So yes, you're getting competition from your local school district, but you might also be noticing large franchise corporations coming in that you might also view as a threat, especially if you're not really clear on your educational philosophy and what makes your program a good fit for kids in your community.
Yeah. Also, typically you charge more for infants and for toddlers, or pre-primary and infants.
But you don't get to have as many of those kids in a classroom, Carrie.
I know, but people get really excited by charging $1,500 a month for somebody. So it depends on where you are. If you are in a large municipality, if you are in a small town, how much you can charge for infant or toddler care is going to be significantly different because there are fewer infant and toddler spots available.
Well, there's probably fewer infant toddlers.
Yes. So it's a supply and demand issue. So part of the reason why there are fewer infant toddler spots are those ratios we were talking about, right? So if you have a center and it's licensed for 100 kids, you're not going to have 90 of them be under the age of 3 because you would have to have so many more staff if you had 90 children under the age of 3. I say this, but the first licensed center I worked at that wasn't part of an education institution was all infants and toddlers. The semester you turned 2, you had to leave. So even back in the way dark days of the 1980s, there were infant and toddler only programs, and it worked financially the way they set it up. It was housed in a church, so the rent costs, the occupancy costs were pretty low. We did have some rent that we paid to the church, but it was pretty low. But the tuition was subsidized by being a parent-teacher co-op, and so some parents elected to have a lower tuition and work some shifts in the classroom. So that was one way that they made it work. I'm in Austin, Texas, which is one of the, well, it's the most expensive municipality in Texas for childcare, and it's one of the most expensive in the country, apparently. I don't know. I haven't been to all y'all's towns, but I know it's the most expensive in Texas, and I've heard that it is on par with some of the big cities like Chicago and New York and LA. And there are infant programs who are charging $2,000 a month for infant care for up to 12 or 18 months. So even if you can only have 6 of those children, if I've got 6 children times $2,000, I'm getting $12,000 in that room. I can probably staff that room for less than $12,000.
I would hope so.
So if I can staff that room and pay the occupancy costs for that room for less than $12,000, I've actually made the room that is usually a loss leader actually make me a little bit of money. Kate, can you explain what a loss leader is? Because I just threw that term out there and I didn't explain it.
That's fine. So I'm going to start with a loss leader that a lot of us might be familiar with. So 2 loss leaders that pop into mind. If you've ever been to a drugstore, so in our part of the world, those are usually CVS or Walgreens, but you'll see them advertise a dozen eggs for $1.50. Now, every grocery store in the country is charging $3 to $4 for that dozen eggs. They use this as their loss leader, as their marketing tool, basically to get you in the building.
So they lose money on every dozen eggs.
And they do this on purpose. If you happen to be familiar with Costco's and you have that kind of a warehouse store, I'm sure that Sam's Club has the same kind of thing. I just don't know what theirs is. Where Costco, it is that rotisserie chicken. You can't buy that 3-pound rotisserie chicken anywhere else in the country for what they charge. And it gets people in the store, and it's all the way in the back. You have to go all the way through the store to get that one little chicken. Very few people walk in and buy just the chicken and leave. So these are the things that get people into that business. A lot of programs have in the past historically used infant care as their loss leader. I know of programs that use after school as their loss leader. Some programs, depending on what time of the year you open, might find that summer camp, spring break camp, or even some sort of winter break camp are where they're going to put in their loss leaders. So, Carrie, does that kind of help with transitioning to where you were headed?
Well, so it explains what it is, but why would we do it? Why does Costco sell you the chicken for $3 or whatever? I don't know how much the chicken is. I just go get it. And yes, I stop and I look at the sweatpants on my way. So we get that at Costco, you're hopefully going to pick up some cheese and some sweatpants and, a ridiculous sized bag of chips and things like that on your way to or from the chicken. But at childcare, we don't have those things that you are going to buy at the cash register, right? So in
Okay.
childcare, the reason we have a loss leader is because of the lifetime value of that family. Infants frequently have siblings. And so you can put people into your infant spots based on whether they have a sibling at your school. So to get moved forward on the waiting list for the infant program, they need to enroll the older siblings. So instead of having one infant that I'm charging $1,000 for, and that's all I have one infant for $1,000, and then I have one preschooler for $750, and I have one schooler for $300, and now I have $2,000 for that one infant. Yay!
Yeah, and what's even great, what I love about infants, Carrie, when you talked about the lifetime value of a client, when you bring that infant in at roughly 6 to 8 weeks, and you have a school age program, which means that they get to stay as part of your program's family until they are 12, you probably now have a child who, believe it or not, is probably worth 6 figures to your program. So
Almost certainly.
that family, that one child is going to be over $100,000 during the lifespan that they're with you. And if you don't know what those numbers are, this is a great opportunity for you to pause, go get a piece of paper, and go, okay, so if they come in as infants, how much do we charge and how long do we charge it? Do we charge it for like until they're 12 months or until they're 15 months or 16 months or 18 months? Like, how long do they pay at that rate? Write that down. And then do the same thing with the next rate and the next rate and the next rate. And then do the math for yourself.
It's very, very helpful. So I would consider, if you have a program that has traditionally been a program that just has kids from 3 to 6, so a Mother's Day Out or a Montessori program, think about offering care for the younger ages and either price it appropriately. Like I said, in Austin, that might be $2,000. In your area, it might be 1,000. I don't know your area, but price it towards the top of what people are charging for that type of care, because there is not enough infant toddler care available. And it is getting worse as more school districts go in and offer free pre-K. This is something that happened in New York City, and it was a disaster.
I'm so confused, Carrie. You're talking about toddlers, but you just told me that there's all this free pre-K. I don't understand.
Well, the free pre-K starts at 3.
I know, but what's that got to do with toddlers?
Toddlers are yet less than 3. So they can come to your school from birth to 3, that they're there full time, well, 6 weeks to 3 years old, that they're there full time. And then if they go to the public pre-K, you can have wraparound care where you do before and after school care, and I call it C-day care. So the days when they can't go to the public school. So Good Friday, St. Patrick's Day, spring break, all of that, they are still coming back to your school. But to do that, they have to have come to your program earlier. You're not going to take a random kid you've never met for spring break, hopefully, because a random kid you've never met for spring break can cause all kinds of havoc at your program.
Okay. But
and then we've also got the after school care for that public pre-K kid, because public pre-K at a lot of places stops at 2:30, and most of the parents aren't done with work at 2:30.
Okay, so 2 things. If you don't have a bus, you might need one.
Yep.
Okay.
Or you might need to talk to the school district's transportation office.
The other thing that I wanted to just, where I was trying to go, and I don't know if everybody is hearing it when we're talking about it, but there are childcare programs around the country, hundreds of thousands of them, that are closing their doors because of the universal pre-K. So they can't figure out how to stay open, and so they're getting into the red because they're not doing what we're suggesting, which is add more infant and toddler spots. So if you didn't put point A to point B and you didn't connect those dots, what we're trying to encourage you to do is, if you have empty pre-K classrooms right now, go and start with opening, maybe it's a toddler class, a second or third toddler classroom in your school. Don't just leave the rooms empty, and don't just put 5 kids in the room, because you'd rather have 5 kids in 2 rooms and pay for all those teachers versus
No.
having 10 kids.
10 kids, one room, other room repurposed.
Absolutely.
And again, if you are afraid of diapers, you have, I don't know what the fear of diapers is, but I'm sure there is one. It's, you know, like tryptodecaphobia or something, but for diapers. The other option is to look at school age care and to look at partnering with homeschoolers in your community. So you can go the other direction. Instead of going younger, you can go older. And is there a homeschool community in your town that is looking for a place to have their co-ops, or to have a pod school? They're called different things in different places, but a group of maybe 5 or 10 families that are homeschooling together. Maybe they hire in teachers, but they need a physical building. Aha, we have this pre-K room that used to have 20 preschoolers. Could we maybe instead have that be a homeschool co-op or a homeschool pod? Yes, we could. Or we can have the after schoolers, and again, those kids that would have been at your program but are now at public school, what are they doing between 2:30 and 6 p.m.?
You know, this got me thinking, Carrie, and I don't think we talk about it enough, which means I'm not sure that enough owners and directors are really connecting, because we used to talk about it all the time. But remember that your building is an asset. It is not just a tool to run a classroom. And so if you have commercial kitchens, if you have classrooms with some sort of specialty apparatus, and what do I mean by that? Some schools actually have like those little mini gymnasium kind of components. You might have sections or spaces within your program that can be marketed and rented out for other purposes. We really do think that every child care center should at least consider having, if at the absolute minimum, free parenting classes or La Leche League support groups that maybe they don't charge for. In other words, you're just getting people to come use your building for free. But then there's all the other things that you can rent that building for, birthday parties that you don't even have to actually do. Like, you can have a person who does princess birthday parties who just rents your preschool room on Saturdays for 6 hours, and they host 5 birthday parties.
Or if you have a gymnasium, again, maybe martial arts classes, dance classes. If you have a piano, there's somebody wanting to teach piano lessons, but they don't want to have a whole bunch of people traipsing in and out of their house. But if they could rent your facility evenings and weekends, then they could supplement their income by being a music teacher. I guess you could do that with flute and violin, but the school is less likely to have flutes and violins.
But if you had a room that was a dedicated music room, regardless of what you personally offered, if it was designed in a way for young kids to learn music in, it might still be a really inviting place for the kinder music or other music enrichment classes to rent the space from you, because you're probably going to be a lot less than if they tried to rent on a commercial level, traditionally commercial level.
And again, this can be something where kids are enrolled in your program part-time, and then they're using these add-on services in addition. So our answer is yes, you should consider caring for kids in other age groups other than that traditional 3 to 6. I've seen in Austin a lot of programs that were Mother's Day Out. And Mother's Day Out traditionally was no diapers, 3 to 6 year olds. You know, those kids who had the summer birthdays, so you weren't ready to send them off to kindergarten. So they were late kindergarteners and preschoolers, and they were open from 9 until 1. a lot more of those programs are offering toddler and infant care still just from 9 to 1. But they've expanded because their pool of 3 to 5-year-olds has diminished. So if they're doing it, you might want to consider it too. Don't do it exactly like other people do. Lean on your educational philosophy and your unique selling proposition. What makes your program different? If you are a bilingual Swahili and Japanese Montessori program, then don't stop being a Swahili and Japanese Montessori program. Just be that for more age groups. Or maybe you can swap it out and have, okay, we don't have as many people who want Swahili and Japanese. Now we've got some people who want French and Tagalog. And so we've got one core for these two languages and one core for these two languages. Don't change what makes your program different. You might have to embrace new people and new age groups, but stay true to your educational vision.
Absolutely. And the sooner that you can help create those raving fans in your families, and the families just think that you are absolutely the bee's knees, for lack of a better term, and if they're starting that when those kids are infants, then you have been working with them for 3 years before they have to make the decision to leave your program to go to universal pre-K. And if you've done your job well, and they understand and they see the growth in their child and all the benefits of your program, you'll probably have fewer families go to the free universal pre-care because their kids love the staff at your program. They are doing wonderfully there. Why upset the apple cart?
Yep. If they've only been with you for 3 months, it's much easier to make that transition to the public school versus if they've been with you for 2 or 3 years. So it builds more loyalty between you and the families. And you know more what that kid needs. So I hope this answered your question. If you like what you learned on today's show, please share the show with someone else who needs to know, and go into your podcast listening app and write a review. I finally figured out how to go read some of those, and that made me pretty excited earlier today. So please go in and write reviews. And if you know someone who should be a guest on this show, send them by, and we'd be happy to have them fill out an application form and be a guest on our podcast. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie. Want to learn more? Check out our website at texasdirector.org. And if you've learned anything today, leave us a comment below and share the show.